Hi everyone, welcome to the Masterclass. I am Arun Murugesan. I have overall 16 years of experience working as a UX designer. Now I head design at MoneyView, taking care of user research, user experience, UI, and also the UX writing areas. Welcome to the Masterclass. Today we are going to look deeper into design thinking, user research, and user experience design. So here we're going to look into what design thinking is. I'm sure a lot of you guys would have heard about the term, but let me narrate a very short story. And one of the most popular brands out there in the hotel is Airbnb. So Brian Chesky, the co-founder and the CEO of Airbnb, before he started Airbnb, he went through few of the pain points, which he, of course, built the product for. He lived in the heart of the city in San Francisco and he was not able to afford the space he is living in. And while attending conferences, he also heard from the other students traveling to the city facing the similar problem. Of course, that was the beginning of the idea of Airbnb to be built. And how did he actually build it? One of the initial things Brian Chesky and his team did was they visited the hosts, and actually they lived in the host space to understand what are the challenges they are facing. This was very immersive in nature. They spent a lot of days living and staying at their hosts to understand them better. Right? This also had an opportunity for Brian Chesky and team to see how other guests living in the same space are going through, what are their challenges and what are their experiences are. Once they all understood a lot of challenges and pain points from both their hosts and guests, they came back and they started defining what Airbnb should be. Now they have all the insights that they have gathered. They went on to the drawing board and they defined. So what they defined is Airbnb should be a platform which enables individuals to share their homes, creating unique and authentic experiences for the travelers around the world. That's quite unique way of defining a problem statement, right? If you observe, there have been points he talking about how should the experience from the host side should be and what are the expectations from the guests. The words are authentic and unique, which is what makes Airbnb stand out from the rest, right? We'll go, of course, deeper into this. Next thing what Brian Chesky did with his team he had built is he put everybody through a brainstorming session where he could listen and understand from different areas of how do we solve the problem that has been defined. So by conducting a lot of workshops, brainstorming sessions, a lot of ideas emerged from there, and that actually shaped the entire product for Airbnb. Once Brian Chesky and his team have collected a lot of ideas, they went back and started building a very simple prototype, which is not actually the final product, but it is mimicking the final product by quick and dirty methods of prototyping, right? So this helped them to visualize how the final product is going to be. So what did they do with the product which was not the final? Is they went into testing all the ideas and continuously iterating on it. So this is how Brian Chesky and his team at Airbnb built an amazing product. Is this the best product they have currently? No. It is an iterative process where they continuously collect ideas, they go and test it out and improve. That's how you now experience Airbnb and probably one of the best experiences out there. This is a great story to listen to, but what is that framework? It is very simple. What you guys heard is what Brian Chesky did, which is called as an design thinking. There are 5 stages in design thinking process, which you just heard the Brian Chesky and Airbnb story. And the first stage is empathy. What happens in empathy stage you just saw, where Chesky and his team lived in the host. They met the guests and the host, collected a lot of pain points and challenges both of them go through, This is empathizing, where you understand your users so well that you know everything about them. You know what are their challenges, how does their day look like, what do they go through, what are their objectives. Everything is defined by interviewing them, trying to be non-judgmental, still collect all the information about the users. Once you empathize, you move on to defining what your problem statement is and how are you going to tackle it. What is done in the defining stage is you build personas. What are personas? Personas are mimicking your real users in a format of user groups. Each user groups have a different persona, which is talking about their demographics, their objectives, their challenges, their pain points, everything, right? This gives a fair understanding of your user, and you can visualize. In a lot of companies, they actually name the personas with common names so that it is as easy as if Tony could use this product, how the product would be. If Mary is using the product, how the product would be. It's going to define how your user experience or the product experience is going to be. Once you define the problem statement, you move on to ideate. You need to get a lot of ideas, right? Are you the only guy who is working on this product? No. There are a lot of teams who are building along with you, especially in startups. The teams are smaller and you are very connected with everybody. Everybody has ideas to build on the problem statements you have defined. The best way is to put the people who can actually help you to build the product you are looking for in brainstorming sessions, conduct workshop, collect a lot of ideas, and then you prioritize what needs to go first and test it out. You have now a lot of ideas. You pick the priority on saying, hey, let's go and build the idea number 1 and let's go test it out. Before you build the final product, there's a process in which you build a prototype. Prototype is not the actual product that is being built. It is similar to how in the architecture space, there's a 3D model first built. Explain it to the clients and saying, this is how your building is going to look like. This is the passage and everything. Similarly, prototypes, which is designed, helps you to give an experience which is going to be built, right? So the prototype is also going to help. You can take it to the real users, test it out how the users are feeling about the product. So this gives a lot of insights while you're prototyping, and quickly you can iterate before you build a product. It's extremely hard to break a building and say, rebuild it. It's easier to break that 3D model and say, rebuild it. Similarly, in the product development, it is easier to iterate on a prototype, which is not the actual product, versus going live and saying, hey, it is not working out. The last, of course, test and iterate. The more you test, the more you understand from the users, the better the product becomes. These are the 5 stages in the design thinking process, which starts from understanding the user and goes on till testing continuously so that your product becomes better and better. I'm going to now define design thinking, which is commonly defined out there. Design thinking is a human-centered approach to solve problems which involves empathy, creativity, and of course, iteration. This can lead to innovative solutions and definitely a successful outcome. You have now heard about the design thinking process. Now the question could come to your mind, how would I go and put this process in my startup? Of course, the startups could be in different stages. There could be startups at the ideation or the early stage. You could have a startup which is at a growth stage where your product is very well fit into the market. Now you're trying to improve it. Or it could be at you're scaling the product to globally, right? How does this change? How does this fit? The process is same. The process is same, but the kind of effort you put in and go deeper probably changes. How does the design thinking help in early stage startup, where most of you guys would be there, is it is going to give you a lot of solutions and discovery via user empathy. The more you go out and talk to your users, the more you understand your users and the more you ideate along with your entire team, different kind of solutions might come out. Also, one more important thing for an early stage startup is rapid prototyping and testing. Somehow I feel a lot of startups miss this, is where they look for a product which is well designed versus what works. Right? Early stage, it is better that you build a prototype, quickly go and test it out and continuously improve on it, versus waiting for the perfect design to come. In fact, there is no perfect design, which is always going to improve. That's when you see Airbnb, every time you visit, there is a difference. The difference is Airbnb is actually understanding the user's need and trying to improve on it. This is common for every single thing you see on a product. It is continuously improving. For a growth stage, the entire user experience where you go and build products and test it is going to be much more crucial, where you will be probably now catering to much more wider audience. Then the stage in which you're scaling a startup, it is going to be all about the customer centricity. You are going to build products not by just ideating internally. You will also engage your actual audience, your users, the market you're heading to, and continuously improve your product. I've been talking about go, know your users, talk to your users, get to know about how your users are behaving, what are their pain points, how your users are actually using your product, what are their behaviors. But how do you do it? Of course, it is a skill of a person who's called as an user researcher, probably part of the product or a design team, who helps everybody in the organizations to know who your users are, how are they behaving. Is it easy? No. It is difficult? No. There is a simple process to it. We'll go through how does a user researcher. It could be anybody in your startup who could do this. Need not that I hire, or you need to hire a user researcher, by understanding few basic principles of user research, which I'll help you guys to go through. You guys would be thinking why user research is important. And here is where I'm going to talk about few statistical data which has made few of the companies successful based on the user insight which they have got from the user studies. For example, Brian Chesky, while he was talking to his users, he got to know that they are looking for how does the actual place look like in real. So when they came back and when they defined, one of the things they said is the places require high quality photographs. So what they did was very different. They actually hired professional photographers and sent to the homes of the guests and asked them to shoot extremely high quality photographs, almost that looks like the star hotels. So what happened because of the user insight which said, I am looking for how the actual place looks like, and putting out the photographs out there which are almost looking like star hotels, is the guests of Airbnb increased their earnings by 40%. And there's another example which most of you guys might be using, Slack. While Slack and the team was conducting user research, they found out it was not easy to search and find the conversations. And when they came back and said, like, let's improve the search and the filters, it actually got higher prioritized because most of the users had the same pain point, saying that I am not able to find the conversations which I am looking for. Now, Slack is really successful because of as easy as you can actually go and search and find and filter it. They also say that this increased their CSAT by 25% once they release the new and updated search. Hope you guys are now saying that user research is definitely important, but how do we do it? Now you guys would be thinking about, yes, can I have few more points? How does user research benefit me? Yes, there are few more. So user research is going to help you to find out the user pain points, which is going to give you a list of things where the users are going through and you improve their product experience. The second benefit is the user research is going to guide your product and design decision making. Generally, you hear a lot of subjective feedbacks coming in, but with a very strong user research, you are going to point out saying that user group A has actually been able to do this, then the decision to be made is this. This also reduces the risk of building products with a low demand. When you have a huge list, the highest pain point of a user becomes your higher priority, and you build this, and something which is, I like to build this, becomes lower in the order. User research is not only for a product or a design, it goes way beyond. It also helps how do you make decisions on your marketing strategies and the ad copies. Simple way is to design multiple ad copies, take it to the users and understand what they are actually comprehending. Whichever works the best to your TG, take them out. Instead of spending a lot of digital marketing budget, you will reduce it by sharper ads that you would have designed. You would have heard about user research, and a question that could come into your mind is, how can I go ahead and do it? Simple, as most of you would have guessed. You define what is the user research objective. What are you going to study? You're going to understand whether button A or a button B works, as simple as that, or it could be as that what are users feeling about this particular feature. It could be very precise, quantitative in measuring the numbers, which is saying that you put out hundreds of surveys and say what is the maximum number of people liking it, or it could be as qualitative in as what is the users feeling. It's up to you to define the objective. Once you define the objective, everybody has hypothesis internally, heuristically, or with the data what you already have. You put hypothesis in your study because you are going to validate it. For an example, I think the users are going to choose option A is a hypothesis. When you go take it out these options to the users and test it, your hypothesis gets validated. Yes, as we thought about, users are choosing option A. Yes, let's go build it. Oh no, the users are actually choosing option C. Why are they choosing? Oh, because of these reasons, and go build option C with the kind of inputs what you have got from. There are methods, multiple methods. It could be as simple as calling the user and saying, sir, we have two options for you. Which one do you like and why? Or it could be in-depth interviews where you sit along with the users for hours and understand by having a questionnaire and answers. Which you choose, which is the way which you guys want to go ahead with. There are some references I've given to choose what kind of method works for what kind of a objective. Basis on that, you can choose and then conduct the study. Yes, conducting the study. This is one of the most interesting parts where you actually go talk to the user or sit with the users, understand, or shadow the user for a few days and how does the user behave. It takes the longest time because you're talking to n number of people, and once you're done with it, you come back and analyze the entire insights what you have found. You prioritize what you want to build. You prepare a user research report, which is going to be your guiding document for your product, the business, and the design folks to start building and improving your product. The templates are going to be very useful for you. Please look out for the Nielsen-Norman templates. They're probably the most commonly used templates out there. Interesting. We have learnt about what user research could do and the impacts of it. But where is design? Right? What is user experience design? What is user interface design? I'm going to put out this question to you guys. Maybe take a minute and think about what user experience design is. I'm sure most of you guys would have already had a lot of answers in your mind. I know what UX is. Mostly as an early stage startup founders, you guys would have already started designing, right? I'll take you guys one step back, maybe help you guys to understand what UX design is from a different perspective. Let's take an example of you guys building a restaurant, right? What goes in? Who is a UX designer? Who is a UX designer? What is UX design? If you think about from this perspective, maybe it is a little different. Most of the times, everybody feels UX design is the website, is the app design, but no. For a restaurant, how you design an experience for both your staff, also your customers, is defined by user experience. While designing a restaurant, what you're going to do is you're going to keep the kitchen may be far away from the place where you are serving the food. Or it's going to be a different restaurant where people could see the kitchen. Why is this decision made? Already you see there are two personas. Persona 1, you're going to design differently for your internal staff. The persona 2 is your customers, the design is going to be different. User experience designer is the one who is going to design spaces which are different for these two people, right? What the look of the space is, the way the tables, the chairs are arranged so that the customers can easily navigate through. They're going to take a place. They might need a bar table, a bar stool so that they can quickly grab a food and go. Or they might need a cozy space which they're going to sit and have coffee for a longer time, attending interviews and calls. Or it could be some place where the children could play around and also dine. You see the difference in experiences? And on the other side, you have your kitchen who actually might cook different variety of cuisines. You might design the kitchen, and the skills are very different. This is how a user experience designer is going to think. And what is he actually finally arriving at? One is the look, but also is the feel, which is what should the customers who come and dine carry out? What should be the experience? If you are a designer designing a space like a fast food restaurant, you might want to optimize for time, where the feel is I'm going to quickly grab food and move out of here. Or if you're designing for a space which is for a fine dine, you might want the feel people should feel very happy about spending their time with their friends and family at the space. The design is going to completely change. This is how a user experience designer is going to think. And now, if you apply the same thing onto a digital product, how does this happen? We are talking about the feel. How does a user experience design influence the feeling? Yes, of course it can. If you want to design something that feels very safe, there are a lot of elements you could put in saying that this brings in safety, this brings in trust, or you could put in something which is, if you want to design for something which is delightful, for example, is gaming, right? The design is going to change based on the emotion, the feeling your customer wants to go through. This is extremely, extremely important while you're designing experiences. Then there is another side which is user interface. What is it? For example, what is the color that should be used in the restaurant? If it is a Chinese restaurant, you might put a lot of red because that is very authentic. Or if it is very organic, you might bring in green. What are you going to emote through the colors is also part of the design, which is user interface design, where there are specialized designers who understands color, typography, layout, and everything. So in the restaurant, the curtains, the lights, the table furnishing, everything is the user interface. The emotion the customers and your staffs carry back at the end of the day is going to be your experience. Okay, it looks like a lot of fancy words used here, but I don't get it, right? I think you guys would need to know how can it be done. Before we actually go ahead and see how can we build experiences, I would want you guys to think that user experience is different from user interface. Why? Because the skill needed to design the experience which has to emote versus the look and feel is very different skill set. Similar to in architecture, you have structural engineers who say what should be the height of each of the floor, the steps and everything so that it is easy to use for the people who live in there. There's another designer who comes and says what should be the color for a children living in that space versus an elderly person living in the space. Similarly, in design, UX and UI are very different skills. It's hard to find somebody who has the both. Here is what is going to be a function of an UX designer and an UI designer. UX designer is going to design interactions between the user and the product, wireframe it, prototype it and test it, talk to the users, conduct user research, come up with information architecture which is going to define the entire navigation of the product, also solve for all possible scenarios that the product is going to cater to. On the other side, you see a different person is going to come in where it is going to be much more delightful. How can you make the boring brick walls much more looking good is by this designer. UI designer who's got the skills of visual design, typography, the color system, and also the most important, the graphics, where the icons, the illustrations, the photographs are chosen and designed. The UI designer is also going to design the final layout and hand it off to the development team who can actually build what it has been designed. Now that you know what does it take to design experiences, here is a framework which helps you to stand where you are in the user experience right now and a direction towards what does it take to build great experiences. There might be few of you guys building which are functional experience. There could be where most of us are building usable experiences. But much more beyond it, there is something called as an meaningful experiences and the topmost where you see, wow, this product is amazing. You can recall products which you love to use are actually delightful experience. What does it take to design these and what is the stage of you? Here's an example if you are a functional experience design, right? What is a functional experience design is something that actually intend to work. Is the user able to select one of the options via radio button? It is functional. The user is able to perform multiple steps using a stepper. It is working. These kind of conversations having while you are building product makes your experience as functional in nature, which is good. Say what is an usable experience. The time you start discussing, is it easy to use? How can we reduce the time taken by your users to fill out a form? What is the usability rating today my customers are giving on the product? How can I improve the usability rating? How can this be much more simplified the user? These kind of conversations, the more often you use, is making or you building an experience which are usable in nature, which majority of us are trying hard to do it, which is great. Now, what is this meaningful experience, right? The reason why you love a product, because the product is designed for you. It is personalized for you. It is not the same. Everybody opens the app and feels the same. Why? The product actually understands you. That is the meaning the product is trying to give you. It knows the context. The kind of conversations you might have being in building and meaningful experiences. What motivates the user to adopt this feature? You're talking about the word motivation and you would go across understanding the emotion of the user. How can we encourage the user to perform this versus how can the user do this? Not every user is capable of doing it or wanting to do it. How can you persuade a user to do it becomes a little more personal. There could be multiple ways of doing it. What benefit the user get while doing it? So the time you start thinking about these kind of phrases in your discussions with the designers are going to help the designers to think much more than is the user able to click a button. Of course, beyond everything is something everybody strive hard, and there are very few companies who build extremely delightful experiences, and that what makes you stick to that product each and every day to use is what is something that is so surprising and feels so delightful to use, right? There are two kinds of delight the users get. One is called a surface delight, which how does it look? How does it move? As soon as you tap, if it is not loading, what are you telling to the users that something is coming up? How are you making the user wait? How does the user see whenever they are clicking on a button? How does the elements in the screen move? How does the page navigate? This is all surface delight, which is very visual, and there is also called as a deep delight. As a great example, whenever you probably had a great holiday in a resort, right? Which holiday you love the most is because of one of the elements that was very memorable to you. Similarly, there is a journey your customer is going through, and there are moments which are very important to them. For example, if the user is booking a movie ticket, one of the most important thing for them is to find a seat. The other most important is to get a ticket, right? If you consider these two are most important moments in the journey of a user life cycle, how can you make them much more delightful? How can you probably surprise them with something which they don't are expecting? This thought, these kind of discussions in your organizations, in your with your designers are going to build much more delightful experiences. Fair. There's a lot of learning about what can be designed, but of course, how do we design it? There is a simple framework where you define, before you start designing, everything you have understood till now as a user story. The reason it is better to define in a user story versus a statement is user stories brings out the real emotions the users are going through. User stories help the designers and the product to actually understand who is the user, what is the need, and what is the benefit they're going to build. We have been hearing about user experience, but how do we do it is a question that could have come into your mind, and here is a slide which is going to help you. Here is the design framework to design better experiences. It starts, as we have been talking about, understanding the users. What are the user's expectations? And we call this stage as the user study. Then you go on putting a proposition. How does the user get benefited, right? What are they going to achieve? What are their objectives? Combining, you will come with a user story. User story is a phrase for a feature which is going to help your product and the design teams to understand who your users are, what are their objectives, and why do they have to do it. By this, the designers and the product people are not going to design a feature, but they're going to help to solve a user's problem, which is very important to document and define what the designer and product team should be doing. User journey is also going to help not just a user story, but connecting how the user actually navigates to the entire product. What is the end stage? Where are you connecting back and everything? Then interaction design is stage. Once the flow is ready, you will start designing elements that actually builds your entire layout. Visual is something that gets added at the end. How does the UI look? By adding colors, the typography, the imagery, the illustrations, the motions, the sound, and everything. Of course, the design doesn't end until it is tested and improved, where we go on to the stage where we do a simple usability test. It need not be a sophisticated setup. What we actually do is build a prototype, take it to almost lookalike audiences whom we know with friends and family. With 5 to 6 people, you go and talk about how does the product work, test it out. You will get a lot of insights before you actually build out the product. This is much more efficient than you think that this product is going to work out when you build it and go live. This is one of my favorite statements generally used is, the better the problem is defined, most of your solutions come out from there. So the time the designers and the product team spend defining the problem statement better, the outcome is half done already. So to put out a simple process where you actually remember this for a longer time and use, here is a very simple diagram which helps you to always remember while you are building product. Is define the product very sharply in the stage 1, go talk to the users, conduct research in the stage 2, come back, analyze, synthesize, prioritize your insights in stage 3, come up with an information architecture which is the entire product navigation. It could be simple as flows, then go ahead and start designing. If you see, user experience is not starting in the stage 1, the design is actually starting in stage 5. You are preparing for everything. So your design is much more to the point solving your problem and more efficient in this case. Of course, keep on doing these iterations by testing and validating, the product gets improved. Here's a request from my side. I'm sure the slide is going to explain you everything in detail. The better the product outcome with more the time you spend on the design. Thanks everyone. Hope this masterclass was very useful for you all to understand what design thinking, user research, user experience, user interface design is. I'm always available. You guys can reach me out on arun.jpeg@gmail.com. Thanks everyone.